So we just began yesterday, B'siyata Dishmaya, with heaven, with the help of God, the third part of Derech Hashem, where he speaks about prophecy. So prophecy, we just gave a preliminary definition, is a message or content information from God. And then we got into talking about the nefesh. Correct? Do you remember that? We started talking about the nefesh, and there's... Okay. So I thought a lot about it to try to sort of explain what a nefesh is. When somebody says it's a soul or a nefesh, what does that mean to you? Does that word have any meaning? Consciousness? Okay.
Life force.
Life force? Does that make sense, life force?
I picture a gold fuzzy ball that sort of just goes like this.
Gold fuzzy ball. Okay. Why gold?
I don't know.
Why fuzzy?
I don't know. That's what I think.
And why ball? Well, ball,
Why ball?
So if we look at the body is really matter. And the body really is a platform. The nefesh is the software. Right? You have hardware and software.
It's not iOS, is it?
It's what?
It's not iOS, is it?
Well, I don't know. Call it whatever you want. But I think that might be a good way. You know, we'll play with it. What?
I don't know about technical stuff, so I don't really know what you just said.
Okay. Well, you have a computer, don't you? Have you seen a computer?
Yeah, I got one.
But the computer does things, correct?
Yeah.
Right? Like you click on a certain program and you're allowed to do X, Y, and right?
Right.
So the computer itself is called the hardware. That's matter.
Oh, the...
But all the things that it can do, like go on the internet, you know, send a fax,
That's software. Okay.
that is all based on software. So maybe we can use that imagery. That software is, and what is software really? Is it material?
No.
It's not. There's an essay by François Lyotard. It's a French philosopher who says that really human beings could live forever if you could just generate an eternal hard drive. Because all our thoughts is the software. You can just upload all your thoughts onto this hard drive. And then these thoughts will continue forever, just keep going through, you know. And in a sense, your consciousness is like a software. It's the content of the software.
So your nefesh is more like a battery.
The nefesh is more like a battery.
Yeah, when the battery runs out, it's not the software goes there, but the battery is what enables.
So that's a good one. I like this, but I don't think so. Because the body can't do the stuff that it does without the nefesh. The nefesh is not simply just battery. It also gives it the ability to do what it's supposed to do.
So nefesh is not meant to run out, is it?
No, it does.
Correct.
Doesn't it?
No,
It's
well,
not meant to run out. It just goes on to something
the Ramchal, this is what we're going to get into today. The Ramchal right now is talking about a nefesh that is connected to the guf, that is connected to the body. And that nefesh allows for us, remember he said that, right? He says, "Kefi hachanata kelim hameshamshim la." It brings tools that the person could use, right? Such as imagination and memory and intellect and will. All of these are kochos banefesh. All of these are powers, abilities, faculties in the nefesh. Sounds like software. Sounds like it.
Software still has a physical component, though. It's on a hard drive.
Correct?
It's a rearrangement of something that exists, but it's something.
It's not a rearrangement of what it exists. No, I disagree.
Okay, on the hard drive, you change. It starts off when you buy a new computer, all zeros imagined. And as you put software on it, you change some of those zeros into ones. Then the sequence
Just
tells
use
the
it as a
computer what to
basic
do.
allegory. Look at it in the most simplistic form that you possibly can.
But I mean,
Then you'll be
You don't like the example? Fine, then don't use it.
no, I'm asking you, in the same way, does the soul have any physical, I don't know what you'd call it,
Yes. Connection.
connection?
Yes. Through the blood.
So when we say the spirit's in the blood, what is...
Yeah. So if you look at
point
it,
to it, can you look under a microscope and point to the soul particle? Like, what is
maybe not. Maybe it is simply just the DNA, the ability of the DNA strand to do what it's supposed to do. I don't know. But this is one type of soul that we have. The Ramchal says in this first chapter that we have two types of souls, not just one. Dun, 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 dun. You're supposed to all lean back in your chairs, throw your hands up and go, what? How is that possible?
I think if I lean back farther, the chair's going to break.
So don't. You already had your accident for the day.
Yeah.
We don't want any more accidents. So he says that not only do we have the nefesh that allows for the body to do what it's supposed to do, but there is another nefesh. We have another nefesh.
Right.
You read ahead?
No, I've studied this in a different way.
So, another nefesh is called
Neshama.
neshama. That is connected to this nefesh. Okay? What? Don't cross yourself.
No,
What?
the nefesh is in the liver, and the neshama is
Okay.
in the brain, and the ruach is in the heart.
We'll get to locations and what that means later on.
It's all about location.
Right. It's all about practice. Right? Because somebody said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And they said, practice. Right? Now, he says the purpose of this second soul is to connect the human being to the spiritual entities that exist. That is it. Otherwise, we would have no connection to the spiritual entity. We would be separated from them. Okay? So look at it as you have a nefesh in the goof, and that nefesh serves as a connector to another piece of nefesh that itself has multiple levels, right? Kind of like a link like this. And there's a link, kind of goes all the way to... Now, through the existence of the second nefesh, he says, Nimshach hashefa hanishpa el ha'adam min ha'makorot ha'elyonim. That is how we receive the overflow from Hashem. Okay? There is, God send us, we call it before, light, water, call it whatever you want. Right? But there is a connection to God. And this comes down to us through this second nefesh called neshama. And that neshama is connected to the nefesh that is in our body. Okay? It's a very complex system. It's not simple. Now, so the tachtona, the lower nefesh, is connected, listen to this, B'chelek hayoter dak sheba'adam. That's for you. He just answered you. The nefesh, the lower nefesh, is found in the most dak. How would we explain dak? What does he say? Yeah.
Duck?
Dak.
It's a
Fine. Fine. You know when you say something, there's fine dust.
Minute.
It's not minute. Well, he doesn't say anything.
particle.
So divine soul enjoy in terms of the most ethereal element of the blood. Most ethereal, most fine, you know, the least material that you can imagine, but it's still material. And he says in the dam, in the blood. So whatever's in the blood that is the most, so you're talking about something in the blood molecules themselves, which is what we're talking about, the DNA. That is where it's housed. And the neshama is connected to that. It's just like, just to imagine it. You don't like it. Okay? Speak.
The DNA found in our blood is similar to the DNA found in a plant.
No. It's DNA, but it's not the same.
It's the same molecules made up in a different order. Structurally, it's the same. It's like two houses look different, but they're both made of bricks.
So, no. But the outcome is radically different.
Right, outcome's different. So you're gonna say that one soul versus another.
But the
is caused by
DNA.
a different arrangement of the same fundamental particles. Much like two different software programs, they're both stored on the same hard drive. They're both a series of zeros and ones. Because the series is different. One's Microsoft Words, one's Internet Explorer, I say.
It would make sense because we're made from the dust of the earth, right? So everything's good.
Yeah, but what he's saying, he's picking up on what I said yesterday. Because yesterday, remember, I said that really we're talking about that the nefesh of the human being is substantially, as a substance, is different from that of plants or animals. Right? That's the Rambam. So, and I've seen some Meforshim say that you really can't say anything other than that in the Ramchal either. Because the Ramchal is very clear that the way that animals perceive, they see and we see, but we see differently than them. And it is a qualitative difference, not just a quantitative difference. So the question is, now you're saying, look, if we're going to use as the imagery as the DNA, then the DNA is exactly identical in all beings. It's just proteins. And the proteins are the same proteins. They're just rearranged differently. Is it true? I don't know. Is that really true?
To the best of my knowledge.
Okay, so then now we have to look at it differently then. Then we would say
Also,
that
how
we're
can we
not...
say it's DNA? Because DNA wasn't known back then. So
What? I know, I'm just trying to use something that's today to say that it's similar. But the idea is that...
Is there a soul particle?
They what?
Is there a part of the blood? Something is that what that part is. That you
He says, "V'atachtona b'chelek hayoter dak shebadam." Right? That's what he says. That's what the Hebrew says. And I read to you another translation if you didn't like mine.
No, fine. I like those Hebrew words.
So the question is, how do you want to say it? What do you want to do with it? Because he says here, the divine soul is joined to the animal soul, which in turn is joined to the most ethereal element of the blood. So you could say it's joined, but not in. And then I solved my problem. That's the way to get out of this. Which, fine, I prefer the challenge of saying no, it's in, and let's try to find another way. But I have an easy answer, which is to follow this.
And then you say that a soul isn't physical at all. It's just joined to
Correct.
physical.
Correct.
But so then how do you know it's there if it's not physical?
Because the body does the functions that they're supposed to do. And you have a principle that a bicycle doesn't do anything. Because it doesn't have a principle of motion. It doesn't.
It's in a pedal, and the wheel goes faster than
You
you're
have to
turning the
adapt
pedal.
it.
But you have a principle of motion. You have something that actualizes it.
What do you mean by that?
You have a pair of bicycles,
Okay.
right? You have a bicycle. Is it moving?
No, so imagine
No.
just sitting on the ground.
Okay. So why is it sitting on the ground and not moving? Because it doesn't have a principle of motion. Correct? It's an inanimate object. Inanimate means no animus, no soul. That's what animal means. It comes from the Latin. So when a person sits on top of the bike, because he's actualized, he can actualize something else. That is something that is in the state of potentiality. He can move it to a state of actuality. There's a principle that says nothing can actualize itself. You can argue about that principle, but let's just, for argument's sake for today, let's take that as a given.
Nothing can actualize itself.
Correct. Everything has to have an actualizing principle called, in Aristotelian philosophy, a cause.
Right, but we know this is false. So the planets orbit without any outside interaction.
That's not true. That's what you say. I don't know that. How do you know that?
There's nothing acting on the planets.
How do you know?
Because there's only empty space between them.
But there's gravity that is pulling them. They're all pulling on one another. Really the principle of motion in the planets, if we follow at least the current model, is the explosion.
Right, there's some initial cause of energy.
So there was something that was actual, that actualized, that placed everything in motion. Once it's in motion, it stays in motion.
Fine.
But you had an actualizing principle, even in their model. That doesn't. So you'd say, okay, so it doesn't have to have an internal cause of an actualizing principle. It's an external one. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. I still stand. There is nothing that actualizes itself. So we need also a principle of motion.
No, because we got the energy from the Big Bang too. Just as
What?
If you're going to stick with that model, then you would say that our energy we use to move comes from the Big Bang as well. In a certain way.
How so? How so? What's the mechanism?
So it's how the sun's powered. So we had at a certain point we had
Combustion?
Well, it's not combustion; it's fusion. But yeah. So so there's fusion going on. So there's.
But do we have that? We don't.
No, wait. The energy from the fusion releases photons, which then are in turn picked up by plants, which do photosynthesis. Then the plant grows, then dies, then we eat the plant. We get the energy from breaking down the plant. Fine. When an animal eats a plant, then we kill the animal, and then we get the energy out of it.
Gamlo. What?
Nothing.
It sounds like the story of Chad Gadia, you want to say.
Did the Torah say anything about how long the body needs, or like how much food the body needs to survive? Like it can't go
An
30
amount?
days.
No,
without-
yeah, I think 3 days.
3 days.
I think that's what it says.
Are
I
you
think.
gonna test this?
No, I was just thinking about in terms of the soul and what it needs to survive.
But it's not.
So
It's
think
not.
of,
Look.
Like Gandhi's fast or something.
No, fasting you can go fast, but I mean, it's the idea of water. The body needs water.
No, I'm thinking
As long as you're taking on liquids, you don't have to eat.
I'm thinking of food.
As long as you're taking, you're filling in the electrolytes that you're losing. But the nefesh is an explanation of how we have a principle of motion, like the idea of the battery that Alex suggested. But the battery is not simply just a battery; it allows for us. It's a battery that brings software with it to allow us to do all sorts of things. And that is the nefesh. But then there's another nefesh that allows us to connect to the spiritual beings. And when we connect to the spiritual beings, then it's sort of like a channel.
It's the Wi-Fi.
A Wi-Fi. A Wi-Fi.
I think it's more like
Okay.
Bluetooth, really.
What?
I think it's more like Bluetooth.
What's the difference between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi? How it works?
Bluetooth connects one device to another. Wi-Fi just gives you internet.
Is that no? I don't think they like that. So why not? You have to explain why not. You can't just say no.
Wi-Fi is higher energy. It means the waves have a shorter wavelength, and because of that, it travels further. But they both transmit information. Bluetooth has less of a range of different types of waves it can make use of, so it can't
Yeah, so
transmit
it's
as
not
much
like
information
Bluetooth.
as quickly.
No.
Bluetooth is limited
but-
to
So
like,
it's more common. You can do internet over Bluetooth.
It's more like
you
a-
can pair your iPhone
I guess
to
like a
using
phone.
Bluetooth and get internet.
whereas Wi-Fi sort of is.
Right,
infinite
But you just can't say
possibilities.
connect 20 computers to
So
one.
Wi-Fi can't connect
It's like
one device to
the
another.
cloud.
Bluetooth can.
No, if you can connect two computers over Wi-Fi, they can share files back and forth.
Yeah, you could do that. I even know how to do that.
It's like
I
thinking
don't
about the
see that.
cloud. You think, oh, it's something up there. No, there's
I don't use cloud.
information houses on the ground. They're actual computers where that seeming cloud is actually located where the information is stored.
Right.
So it's still a device connecting to a device. It's just the range in which those devices need to connect.
But all those imply one thing: a material.
Yeah, it's
Universe.
physical to a physical.
That's the key. This system is physical to non-physical, spiritual to physical. Really, that's how prophecy works, right? That a piece of information can come through the Wi-Fi, right, and gets presented on a screen, but there is no hardware on the other side. That is cool.
You see this in the like like this in the movie screen, you'll see like a glowing rod of plutonium.
What?
You ever seen like in like a TV show, you see like glowing plutonium, like a rock of plutonium, so like the terrorist is always trying to steal or whatnot to make his bomb. That's
Okay.
physical to non-physical right there. If you were to weigh that lump, its mass is going down every second, and it's emitting light, which isn't physical.
Light is physical.
It's not physical, there's no mass.
Light?
There's no mass, it's not matter.
Light?
Light.
You can't measure light?
It's non-physical, doesn't have mass, it's not matter.
I don't know about
Matter
that.
has to have mass, has to weigh something and take up space. Light takes up space but has no mass.
But it takes up space.
But it doesn't
So
weigh
it's
anything.
material.
It doesn't though, because there's no weight.
Weight doesn't mean it's not material in my world.
Oh.
If you take space, if you occupy space, you're considered a body.
Okay, it takes you can fit an infinite amount into a space.
Can you? Infinite amount of light into space?
But it can only fit through a gap of a certain size, which makes it.
Then it's not infinite.
But you can fit an infinite. Once you have a gap it can fit through, you can fit an infinite number through at once.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If I mean, it's not a perfect analogy then.
It's what?
Maybe it's not a perfect analogy then to this world. Then.
No, I don't think so. So he says because you have, so really you have a body and two souls connected to it. Right? Can you all explain to me how we have one body and two souls now?
Yeah, we have one soul that allows the body to do what it needs to do. And then we have the other soul, which is connected, called the neshama, which is connected to the nefesh, which allows us to connect to the spiritual.
Excellent, good. So that is the model of the Ramchal, right? So if I wake you up at 3 a.m., how many souls are there in the Ramchal? You're supposed to say, 2, man, 2. Okay, so, והנה מפני הקשר הזה שנקשרת נפש זאת בגוף על ידי נפש התחתונה, so because of the connection of the upper nefesh and the lower nefesh to the body, the upper nefesh is also limited in what it can do because it's connected to a body. Anything that's connected to a body means it's going to be limited. Certain things it can do and certain things it can't do. That's how it works. People don't like that. People are like, why? Why can't my neshama do Because you can't. It doesn't work that way. Since the body functions according to certain rules, your nefesh has to follow those limitations. So, he says, therefore, נמנע ממנה ההשתתפות והעסק עם הנמצאים הרוחניים והנבדלים, כל זמן היותה מתקשרת עם הגוף. דהיינו כל ימי חיי האדם. So as long as the neshama is connected to the body, it can't connect to the spiritual entities in the same way that if it wasn't connected to the body at all.
So you have to die in order
To fully, become one with the spiritual entities, yeah. You don't have to die, you have to get morbid, but the neshama has to be released from a connection to the body.
So,
And then it's no longer limited by the body.
Does that mean that whenever we're sleeping, there's a possibility that
Sleeping is the next section. We'll talk about that on Sunday. Yeah.
So if prophecy is so significant, why get rid of it? Why did they get rid of it just to
They didn't get rid of it. We dropped a few levels.
I thought the Anshe Knesset they prayed to get rid of idol worship, and then
That is the consequence. Correct. Correct. That is, if you're not going to be at the level of dealing with Avodah Zarah, then you don't, I get Nevuah. Because that is to combat Avodah Zarah. You have Nevuah. You need that tool. But if you're not at the level to even understand what it is, and it's not really an issue.
It was getting to the point where people just couldn't combat Avodah Zarah
Correct.
anymore. So the few who said,
Correct. So let's get it out of it, and yeah, it's called Yeridatz Hadoros, right? The decline of the generation. Mincha.